Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to the WP Quickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. Today I'm going to be going right back to basics, so I'm going to be talking about how to submit your new WordPress website up to the major search engines so they can index that and people can find you. And so thanks for taking this time to join me on this pretty dark and gloomy overcast Sydney afternoon, and welcome to those overseas and those watching on the replay. Before we start, make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you're viewing this on YouTube to get my latest video updates. And during the presentation, the talk, drop a note or a question in the comments anytime. I'll try my best to answer, and just let me know who you are and where you're coming from. So we've got Susan. Hi, Susan. Mr. Meow Puss. These are some of our regular viewers. Thank you so much for taking your time with me. Norman Jessup, hi to you guys. Tipper, David Johnson in Wollongong, Jean in New South Wales, and Morris again. So hi to everyone. Thank you again for spending your time, your precious time with me this afternoon. Okay, let's jump straight into it, shall we? Oh, a couple of more people here. Lance from the USA. Hi, Lance. Thank you so much. I haven't seen you here before, so thanks for joining me if this is your first time. And Joe as well from New York. So a couple of the people from United States, thank you for joining. And John as well. Great stuff. I really do appreciate you taking the time. And I hope these little bite-sized quickies are useful for you on your WordPress journey, whatever stage you're at. You know, this is meant to be more for beginners, I think, but sometimes I do delve into some more technical topics. But yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you guys with me. Okay, let's jump into it. I'll make that a little bit bigger. Oh, next one. There we go. So, sitemaps. Winding all the way back to the beginning of your WordPress journey, one of the essential post-launch steps that you need to take with a new WordPress website, well, any website really, but we're talking about WordPress websites here, is submitting it to the major search engines. So before we go on and see how that's done, just a couple of questions that come to mind. The first one is, what is a website XML sitemap? This could be the first time you're hearing about this. You might not know exactly what I'm talking about. So, XML is something called a semantic meta language. It's a bit of a mouthful there. Basically, it's a type of language, a type of way of writing content that is very, very easy to understand by computers. It's very structured, so the computers can understand how things relate to each other. Basically, the XML sitemap, it lists all the URLs, all the unique URLs in your website, and it acts as an index for the search engines to crawl through initially your website to make sure you get all the pages are indexed, all your posts are indexed, and things like that. Another question often asked is, do you need to submit a website to search engines? The answer is no, not really. There's no absolute requirement to do this, to submit it to the search engine. And, you know, eventually it's likely that the search engines are going to find your website anyway, especially if people are linking to it and you're linking to other places as well. However, you'll probably want the search engines to start finding and indexing your site as soon as possible so that it appears on the search engine results and you start getting website visitors, of course. So it's not a requirement, but generally a part of your post-launch process, just to make sure they do pick it up and you start getting visitors. Okay, why? Another question, why should you submit your site to the search engines? Well, generally, people are going to be finding your website in one of two ways, organic search or paid search. Now, organic search is free. So it's the listing that displays on Google and the search engines when you type in a keyword. Pretty much most people are familiar with that. But we're excluding all the ads. So get rid of, don't think about the ads that are like the first three or the ones at the side or wherever. Your organic stuff is all the free listings. So when a business starts up, there usually isn't a pot of gold there available for paid marketing. So reliance on the free and organic results is pretty vital if you want to get some traction, get some traffic into your website, at least initially before you get up and running. So submitting your website to the search engines is free. It's a one-time and mostly quick process that you'll probably want to do. And ongoing, so going through the process, it also gives you access to some great tools that you can use later to improve your website visibility, online visibility. You're going through the years when you start really building up your website and looking to grow that audience, grow those visitors, and make money online. So let's jump into the first one, obviously submitting your sitemap to Google. Google, obviously, probably going to be the most significant source of potential traffic for many website owners. So it kind of makes sense to start your submission process here. Just so submit to your website to Google, you're going to have to sign up for a Google account, and the place to sign up is search.google.com /console. I'll just post that link in the comments there. And don't worry if you can't see the comments on playback. I'm going to post all these links in the actual comments down below on Facebook and on YouTube as well after the talk. So that's the link to go to register. So sign up if you don't have a Google account, or log into your existing Google account, and that gets you to the next step, which is this one here. I'm just going to make this full screen just so you can see those a little bit better. Now, once you have signed up, once you've logged in, the first thing you're going to see is this welcome screen. Now, there's two options here. I would suggest if you're the first time, this is the first time you're doing this, I would suggest that you use the URL prefix method. So that's a method on the right-hand side of the screen that you can see just now. Now, type in the URL of your website and make sure you've decided whether or not to use a www or not to use a www. Try and be consistent in using that in Google Analytics and Google Search Console and the other ones there. You don't want to mix and match them because Google does see them as different things. So your www.yourdomain.com is different from yourdomain.com from an analytics point of view anyway. So use the URL prefix initially. If this is your first time, it's a lot easier to do. However, if you are launching one of many websites on a domain name, so if you're a big business and you're launching your main blog website, you may be doing a courses dot, you've maybe got a subscriptions dot yourdomain.com, then yeah, you can use the domain verification, and that allows you to verify all the sites on that domain at once and not just do them individually as you're doing with the URL prefix. However, if you're going to use this option, then you need access to the DNS as verification is required. So you need to be able to add a record to your domain name DNS. So if you're going to use the domain method, make sure that you also have access to the place where you've registered your DNS and you can update those records. But for this instance, we're going to be using the URL prefix because it's the easiest one to get started with. So next, once you've entered your URL and you've clicked on add, you're going to be asked to verify that you are the website owner. Now, there are multiple ways of doing that. I'll just make the screen a little bit bigger here. Multiple ways to verify that you're the owner of a domain with Google. The first one that's usually selected by default is an HTML file. So you can see this one here on the left-hand side of the screen. It's fairly simple to do. Google will generate this random HTML file for you. It's got a random number inside. What you do is you download that to your local machine, and then you will upload that to your website file system's root folder. So that's where your WordPress wp-config.php file resides. And once you have done that, then you will click on verify, and Google will just spin around and have a look for that file on your website. And if it finds it, that's great, you're good to go. If you don't want to upload HTML files, so Google does provide a few other options. There's an HTML tag. So if you're able to put stuff into your WordPress headers, and there's several plugins that you can do that with, you can just paste that tag into WordPress. It displays on every page of your website, and you can verify that way. If you've also got a Google Analytics or a Google Tag Manager account, that's already been set up with the website, and it knows that you own it, so you can use those ones as well, or your domain name provider as well. And again, this is the DNS way of authenticating that you own the domain. So those are the other options available to you, but certainly the HTML file is probably the quickest one for that. Alan has a question. If Google thinks www and without are different, can you do both? It's generally not a good idea to do both. You choose one and stick with it, because you've got two sets of data. You never know when people are going to be going in for www or a non-www. So this is something you should probably decide straight off when you're thinking about how you want to represent yourself or your brand online. So choose www or choose not. If not, it's called a naked domain. There's no real difference for SEO point of view or speed if you decide to use or drop the www. It's just more for consolidation. So you've got like you know exactly where people are coming from, and you've got a consistent set of analytics and data coming into you. So great question, Alan. Okay, next. Before Google can start crawling through your website, you need to tell it the URL of your website's XML sitemap. Now, how do you find that? Well, in the WordPress core, as of WordPress 5.5 and above, it actually includes an XML sitemap in WordPress. So the core app now includes an XML sitemap. It generates it automatically from WordPress 5.5 and above. So that means you don't need any additional plugins to generate one, which is great. So you can get started straight away and submit all your sitemap to Google. Now, you can find your WordPress XML sitemap at, let me just, do I have that here? Here we go. I'll just copy this one and paste it in. So you got to enter your homepage URL, like this. And then /wp-sitemap.xml. So obviously in that link I've just pasted, you want to replace yourdomain.com with your own website domain, and then /wp-sitemap.xml. And that will show you the default WordPress core sitemap. And basically it contains links to maybe other sitemap indexes for posts and pages, taxonomies, that's categories and tags, users, and any other post types that you might have associated with your WordPress website. And that could be things like products, if you've got WooCommerce installed, for example. Let's have a quick look through. So here's the XML sitemaps. This is the core one in WordPress. And you can see at the top, it's like an index of all those different types. So you've got another link for your posts, a link for your page, a link for your product, because I've got WooCommerce installed in this particular demonstration here. XML sitemap for your categories, for your tags, and for users as well. And if you click into those links, then you'll just see a list of URLs. I'm not going to show you a screenshot for that, but just, and then that'll allow Google to then index those particular pages quickly. Now, you can use the built-in WordPress XML sitemap. It's good, and it covers all the basics, and that's all you really need. However, sometimes you might need a little bit more control over what the search engines see and don't see in XML sitemaps. For example, the WordPress core one, it generates a sitemap for users, and you might not want Google to index all the users in your website. So you can use a plugin to generate more detailed XML sitemaps for your needs, for your requirements for that particular website. I use SEO Press as a link in the comments below. And so I use SEO Press on all my client websites and all my own websites. But you can use Yoast SEO, or if you've got Jetpack, Jetpack also can generate a sitemap.xml for you as well. So there's lots of other different plugins there, but those are probably the two top ones. My favorite, SEO Press, and Yoast SEO, which is probably the most popular plugin in the WordPress plugins site. So here are the settings. I'll just make it a little bit bigger and just quickly. These are the SEO Press settings. for XML sitemap generation. I've actually cut off some of the bottom. It's quite extensive, but that's the basic stuff there. Allows you to set it up, allows you to view your sitemap, what goes in there, and then down the side you can choose which post types appear in there, which taxonomies, and you can play around a little bit with the XML, the HTML generation as well. Now, most of the SEO plugins, if you've got one installed, so if you install SEO Press or Yoast, it's going to probably switch off the WordPress core XML sitemap because you don't really want them conflicting. You just want one source of truth for the search engines. But regardless, if you use WordPress core or a plugin to generate your sitemap, open up your website XML sitemap URL in a browser tab, just so it's ready to go and you can copy and paste that for the next step. So a couple of questions here. Let's think. Mosen says, if I change web hosting, do I need to upload and verify that file? Great question. You don't need to do that. So this is a Google generated thing. It's got nothing to do with your web host. It's just basically authorizing letting Google know that you are the owner of that website because you can upload that file. Therefore, you've got access to that site. So no, if you change hosting, just make sure you uplift all this stuff and copy it across to your new web host. Google shouldn't need to use that again. So this is like a one-time thing. But you know, if you do have to go through the verification process, it's good to have that site that file just sitting there just in case. But so just to answer your question, if you change hosting, do I need to upload the file again? No, you don't. Alan asks, just looking at one of mine and it gives the admin usernames. Can you hide them? Yes, you can. There's code snippets out there. If you do a Google search for WordPress core XML sitemap and then remove users, then there's little code snippets you can paste in your functions.php file, and that removes whatever the bits that you need for those. Susan says that she uses Rank Math. Rank Math is another SEO plugin. So I think there's SEO Press, there's Yoast SEO, there's Rank Math, there's All-in-One SEO, I believe. And that's probably the 4 top ones that people use, just off the top of my head. Joe says, as I add pages and posts, etc. to my site, will I need to continue to generate and submit sitemaps as I build my own site? That is a fantastic question, Joe. And the quick answer is no. So all the sitemaps, whether it's WordPress generated or whether it's SEO Press or Yoast, when you automatically add a post or a page, then they will automatically rebuild your HTML sitemap. So it should be automatically done anyway. So no, that's completely dynamic. It's generated automatically, and you don't need to submit that ever again. Just it's a once-off process. Great question. Okay, moving on. So we're going back to submitting the sitemap on Google. So we've created our account, we've logged in, we've went to our WordPress website, we've got the URL for the sitemap ready to go. So when you log into the Google Search Console, you'll see this little navigation on the left-hand side. Just make sure right at the top, oh, I'm not even on screen, I'm pointing, right at the top, that you've got your website selected and it's the correct one. So the Google Search Console, you can manage multiple websites, and I've got lots of them in there, some of my clients, some of my own. So just make sure when you click on that you're managing the correct website for that. And then go down below in index and click on the sitemaps section on the navigation bar. And that'll lead you to this little page here. So at the top, you see add a new sitemap, and you basically complete that URL. So it already has the prefix of your website that you've submitted, you've added, and then you just enter the slash, so that'd be sitemaps.html or wp-sitemap.xml, and then click on the submit button. And once you've done that, you'll be able to see down below is all your submitted sitemaps. So that the bottom half of that page shows you all the submitted sitemaps there. So I've just got the one submitted here for my main website, zeropointdevelopment.com, and it's called sitemap.xml, and that's the one that SEO Press generates. You can see what type. So it's a sitemap index, which means it's got links to other sitemap files, which I showed you previously. At the time it was submitted, when it was last read by Google, and its status. So status can be like success or fail or warning for things like that. And at the very end, it just tells you roughly how many discovered URLs it has found using that sitemap there, just to give you an idea and an indication. So definitely come back and check the Search Console, because it can take a few days, even weeks sometimes, for Google to get around to indexing your website. So come back often, regularly-ish, and just check to make sure that that sitemap still has success. We don't want any warnings or failures from there. And then just keep an eye on the number of discovered URLs as well. Okay, that was Google. But what about some of the other search engines? So of course, Google is the dominant search engine, but there are other ones out there that people do use. So Microsoft's Bing search engine, it's very popular, and it's also built into many Windows apps by default. And some people just don't get around to changing that to Google. So that's why Microsoft's Bing is such a big search engine. It's probably the second one behind Google. So it does make sense to submit your XML sitemap to Bing as well. And once indexed on Bing, it also actually automatically includes that into DuckDuckGo and Yahoo, because they use the Bing SEO, the search ranking API. So once you've done Bing, it automatically goes on DuckDuckGo and Yahoo. So you're basically getting three for one here. Now, to submit your site to Bing, it's pretty much similar process to the one for Google. So there's the link to go to. It's called Bing Webmaster Tools. You'll be asked to log in to the tool, similar as you were asked to log into Google. If you don't have a Microsoft account, that's fine. You can use Google or you can use Facebook, I believe, to log in. But regardless, log in. And this is the welcome screen that you're presented with. So if you've got existing data from Google Search Console, you can actually pull all that stuff in. So if you've already went through that past process, then you can link the Bing Webmaster Tools to Google Search Console and it'll pull the data in. However, let's just go with the easy one, which is on the right-hand side, which is adding your site manually. And that's just as simple as pasting your website URL in there and press and add. And again, just remember to drop or use the www if that's what your preferred method is. So next is this one here. So again, similar to Google, Microsoft is going to ask you, or Bing is going to ask you to verify the site that you're the site owner. And again, the first way that's selected is to download a file. And this time it's an XML file, not an HTML file. But the process is exactly the same. You download that file to local, and then you'll FTP that up to your website in the root folder where your wp-config.php is. Then click on the verify, and your Bing will search. It'll have a look in your website, make sure that file is there and all the data matches. And once that's done, that's you. You're verified. You're the site owner, and you've got access to the Bing tools. So again, very, very similar. The two consoles are very similar, Google Search Console and the Bing Webmaster Tools. So again, you've got a little left-hand side navigator here. And again, make sure that you've got the right property or website. So they call it a property. It's the website selected at the very top. Here, make sure I'm on screen. Very top of that navigation. And then just simply go down to the sitemaps. Click on that, and then you get a screen which is very similar to the Google one here. A little difference is that there's no kind of area to type in your site. So you're going to click on the Submit Sitemap button right in the top right corner there, and that's going to bring up this little dialog box here where you're going to type in the URL of your sitemap .xml and submit that. And then once that's done, it will be listed down below in the same way as it is in the Google Search Console. And it's got a similar information there. You got your sitemap URL, so it tells you what it is, when it was last submitted, when it was last read or crawled, and then the status and the number of URLs it's found in that. So again, with Google Search Console, with Bing Webmaster Tools, it's always a good idea to log in every so often, just to make sure that the sitemap is still success, it's still reading it properly. Quick question from Alan. Alan asks, if you change the structure of your website, for example, if you consolidate some top-level heading tabs, Should you resubmit them? No. If you're using the core sitemap or Yoast or SEO Press, then that sitemap.xml will be generally dynamically generated. And if you've got it submitted to Bing Webmaster Tools and Google Search Console, then periodically they'll pull that and they'll use that as like the master index. And if it does change, they'll just recrawl all those new website URLs. So quick answer is no, you don't have to resubmit that. Once your sitemap has been submitted, it dynamically refreshes in WordPress, and Google and Bing will automatically, every so often, just have a look, make sure that it matches. And if there's some sort of mismatch, then it will recrawl some of those URLs. So great question, Alan. We've done that one. Okay, so that's it done basically. So we've done Google, we've done Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo. So again, the question we should ask is how you're going to check if your website has actually been indexed. And the easiest way to do that is actually to go on the websites themselves. And there's a little bit of a format that you have to type in. And the format is site : and then yourwebsite.com. So for example, my one would be, and you can see that in the graphic here. You go into the Google search index, you go into the little field there, keyword field, and you type site : and my one is 0.development.com. Press return, and if there's any available indexes there, it's going to tell you about it. So in here, you can see there's about 931 results. So I know, and you can avoid that. I just ignore that first one because that's a Google promotion, that one there. And the first link before it is the home page there. So immediately, if you type in that format into the search engines, and that works across all of them, then it's going to tell you if they've indexed any of your pages. And just keep scrolling down and just to make sure that you've got some pages linked in there. And that's exactly the same for the other search engines. So they all have the same format. This one is DuckDuckGo. So again, I've typed site : 0.development.com, which is my website. And again, you can see here it's showing all the results. And the first one actually is a blog post and not the homepage, and that's DuckDuckGo. So of course, all the search engines index things differently. But yeah, if you're a new website user, first time, register and submit your sitemap on Google and Bing. Then you might have to wait a few days, maybe even a week, hopefully not a week. But keep going back to the search engine and search for site : and then yourwebsite.com, and just to make sure that it's picking it up for that. Yep, and that's it. All done. That's pretty easy. So now that you submitted your website to Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and Yahoo, unless you change the way that WordPress generates the XML sitemap. So for example, if you're on the WordPress core one, and then you maybe install SEO Press, it's a different URL. So unless you do that, then you won't have to go and change it. But if you do change the way that your sitemap is generated, the URL that's generated on by installing a plugin, then you will have to go through this process again, but only once again. So hopefully you're not going to be chopping and changing plugins every so often. But if you do, then yeah, you will need to submit it because it's on a different URL. But please do. I know it's a once-off process, but please do regularly log into Google Search Console and the Bing Webmaster Tools and check out all those additional features that they have. So they offer things like showing you the backlinks, so all the sites that are linking to your site, which is quite useful to know. The search keywords that people are finding your website with, and any errors as well. And you want to pay particular attention to the errors, because if the errors continue, that's bad for SEO, and your rankings could drop for that. So definitely useful tools to log into every so often. Maybe put it into your monthly routine. Just once a month, going to Google Search Console, go into Bing, and just to make sure that there's no errors in there, the sitemap's still working properly. It should just be a 5-minute job, less than that if there's no errors. But yeah, have a look at those regularly. Okay, I'll take some quick questions. There's some stuff popping up just now. Nick asks, can you exclude a particular web page from a sitemap? Yes, you can. So probably not easily from the WordPress core one, but definitely if you're installing plugins like the Yoast SEO or SEO Press, you can generally set what you want to include in the sitemap, and then there'll be an exclusions page there. So if you want to exclude particular taxonomies or pages or categories or even a single URL, then yes, you can add that to like an exclusions list, and it'll override the general rules for generating your your sitemap. So you might want to exclude things like a checkout page, cart pages, things that you don't really need indexed because they're kind of more dynamic data. Great question. Daniel asks, he thought his was submitted, but when he checked, only your home pages. Right. Okay. So in that case, Daniel, you want to go into your sitemap.xml and just have a look and see what URLs are inside there. You might have an error with that, so it might only be showing the homepage, in which case you probably need to go into your SEO plugin and make some modifications and then have a look at your sitemap XML again, just to make sure it's generating all those URLs for there. So it's always worthwhile doing this as a process, going in each month and just having a look and making sure that Google is picking up on all those URLs. John asks, I've been told that search engine indexing of WordPress pages works better with named pages rather than numbered pages. Yep, that is absolutely true. So we're John's talking about pretty permalinks or permalinks with words in them, rather than the default WordPress way, which is, I think it's $P for page equals, and then the P for post equals, and then the post number, which is the default way of generating links within your WordPress website if you set up a default WordPress installation. So the answer is yes, John, that is absolutely true. So the way that the search engines work, all of them, is they're looking at the keywords in your URL, and they're making sure that matches the content and meaning of your web page. So if your URL for the page matches or has the keywords of the main focus of your website, then it's going to get a stronger ranking than if it's just P equals $1, 2, 3, 4. That means absolutely nothing to people. So yeah, for SEO and for ranking, definitely, if you are using the default WordPress P equals $ID number, get rid of that and then move that over to the post name is probably the best choice for that. And you'll find that in your settings and in your permalinks. So settings, permalinks in WordPress. But just make sure that if you are changing that, make sure you understand that if you change at any time, and this is true for everything, if at any time you're changing the way that your WordPress installation generates your URLs, so if one page had a URL with P equals number, and then you changed it to the post title with words, bear in mind that you're going to lose all that existing Google rankings for those pages because they will no longer exist. And then it'll take a while for those new URLs to come up in rankings. So for example, if you've been using the ID number for 5 or 6 years and you've got 4 or 5 posts on page number 1 in Google, even although it's not ideal, you're still on page 1 in Google. If you change that, then those URLs are no longer valid. And your new URLs with the numbers, there's no guarantee that will hit page number 1 again. So you have to think about that. But in general, I would always recommend people use the post title for the custom URL links and not the default ID. So that's a fantastic question, John. Ah, right. Yes. Okay. You probably won't lose your links. I'm saying probably, but yeah, there's no good way of doing that. If you've linked to the posts using WordPress, then generally it will try and recognize them. So the ID for each post is unique. So WordPress should be able to pick that up. And in fact, you can still actually get posts and pages using the P equals number. that's still valid. It will still work, but then it will redirect to the new named one for there. The best way to do that though is to install a redirect plugin. So if you do have maybe a handful of P equals 1, 2, 3 post types that are at top in Google, maybe in the first page, and you don't want to lose that, then the best way to do that is to install a redirect plugin, and there's a plugin called Redirects. And then you'll put your old URL with the P equals number equal to the new word URL for that. And that will tell Google that that page doesn't just magically disappeared, vanished, that it is actually not there, but here's the replacement. So that's going to stop you completely losing your rankings. Google will know that there's a new page and eventually index that to replace the old one. So redirection is the answer to that question, John. Mosin says, any extra steps for Apple devices? No, not to my knowledge. A website is a website. The search engines are search engines, and that's the process you go through. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your questions today. That was really, really good. Some fantastic questions there. Next week, I'm going to be going back again to a little bit more basics and talking about no follow links. So how do you set up no follow links? What are they? How do you use them in WordPress? Where should you use them? And all that sort of good stuff. I've got some more questions here. Alan asked, I'll do this last one here. Does Google learn from my usage and show me my sites that I visit often higher up in the list, and it shows them to others? Yes, Alan. So that's happened for probably a good 5 or 6 years at least, maybe more. So everyone's search results is different. It depends on what you've searched for before. It depends on where you are as well, because Google knows where you're logged into, unless you're using a VPN. So it's going to show you different results, different related results, what it considers related results, than somebody else if they're Googling in a different area as well. So if you want to find out just generally what's going to come up with keywords, then I would recommend you open up an incognito or private tab, and then do your keyword searches on there. And that's a more generic generic list of search results you're going to get, but it's still going to know where you are, your location wise. So it's still going to serve more related information to where you live for that. But generally, incognito is like a more general return list for that. But super last question. Thanks for that, Alan. Again, I'm always looking for topics. So there's a link below here that you can send me some more ideas, topics to cover in the WP Quickies. Sorry, we went over a little bit today, but there were some fantastic questions I didn't want to miss out. As well, go to WPAustralia.org if you're in Australia and you're looking to find out where all the WordPress meetups are. Most of them are still online, but some are getting back to physical meetups, which is great. So I think Perth and Melbourne have done physical meetups last month, and that'll just hopefully come back, as the COVID vaccine gets rolled out and the restrictions are eased. And just a quick shout out for Slack as well. We're always on Slack, so wpaustralia.slack.com. Join there. You can join from the wpaustralia.org website and hang out with us. Let us know what you're up to, or if you've got some specific questions, you can ask them in there. And that's me, as always. Happy to connect with you guys online. I'm on LinkedIn mostly, sometimes on Instagram, and probably rarely on Twitter these days. But thanks again so much for watching, and I will catch up with you guys next week.